Hey guys, welcome back to Doc Loyal Talks Comics. Yes, I have a shiner right here, a split, if you will. It's not because I got into a fight at the comic shop over who would beat, Hulk versus Batman. Instead, it was because of my lovable little kitty, Percy. Sleeping the other night, minding my own business, he goes zip right across my nose. I start feeling blood trickle down into my beard. Took 20 minutes to get it to stop bleeding. Such is life. So, sorry I'm not as, uber attractive as usual in these videos, but let's get down to brass tacks. So, we've got the greatest hits video this time around, and this is going to be a facsimile edition of The Dark Knight Returns issue 1 of 4 by Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and Lynn Varley. This is the seminal Batman work. I've talked about this book just a little bit before in a previous video, but never have I talked about them individually. So as these books come out, this is going to be kind of like the Fantastic Four series that I did, where I'll do all 4 issues individually. So to start off, we have a Gotham that knows Bruce Wayne, but doesn't know Batman anymore. Batman has retired. He's now in his early 50s, and he has pretty much given up on the city as far as trying to be its protector. He's going to let Gotham do Gotham. And, I've said this before. I said this in a previous video, but it's funny that Frank Miller was 29 when he wrote this, okay? Most people don't have the sensibilities, the understanding of life and how tired life can make one when they're not even 30 yet, how tired one might be at 50 or 55. So it's funny to see just how on the nose, no pun intended, Frank Miller got this. It's the perfect characterization of Batman, but it's Batman who's older. Batman who walks through his city at night and doesn't even realize it. He ends up running into these hoodlums, and they said, "Come on, slice and dice." I don't know, he's awful big. And then it says, "Slice and dice, we have a quota." No, I don't know, man. Look at him, he's into it. And he ends up just hugging himself under this light in Crime Alley. And they run off because they realize he's they don't realize that he's Batman, but they do realize that something is not right. You ever get that feeling, whenever you're getting into a fight when you were in high school or whatever, and the other guy is just way more into it than you would prefer that he, be? Oh, yeah, come on. Yeah, well, I'll meet you outside. That's fine. And then you have to start questioning yourself. Meanwhile, we have the rebirth of Two-Face, Harvey Dent. And he has had a surgery to make both sides of his face resemble what he once looked like. And it's supposed to show that his psyche is cured as well as physically he's cured. But Bruce starts to go back and he thinks about when he fell into that cave and when he's found those bats for the first time and he found his purpose in life. He found where he was supposed to be. And it says, "I was only 6 years old when it happened, when I first saw the cave. Huge, empty, silent as a church, waiting as the bat was waiting. Now the cobwebs grow thick and the dust thickens in here as it does in me. And he laughs at me and curses me, calls me a fool. He fills my sleep, he tricks me, brings me here when the night is long and my will is weak. He struggles relentlessly, hatefully to be free. I will not let him. I gave my word for Jason, never, never again." So he's grown a mustache, and then Alfred comes and says, what happened to your mustache, sir? You've shaved." And that's when you kind of realize he's changing. He's morphing. back into Batman. He's morphing into something that makes him feel safe, something that he knows intimately more than anybody else. He knows that those bats gave him purpose, and he is to go out there into the night and frighten those cowardly lots that would do harm to average people. He watches the news. He gets to see, he's reliving his death and rebirth as Batman from Bruce Wayne. And eventually you hear the bat talking to him. And says, "You're puny, you're small, you're nothing, a hollow shell, a rusty trap that cannot hold me. Smoldering, I burn you, I flare, hot and bright and fierce and beautiful. You cannot stop me, you cannot win. You cannot with wine or vows or the weight of age. You cannot stop me, but still you try and still you run." Frank Miller has a way with words. Now, as he's gotten older, sometimes those words get away from him and he doesn't have as much control as he had at this point, and he becomes too verbose. But at the same time, then eventually in this book, you get to see that the mutants are destroying parts of arcades and things like that, and Bruce eventually says enough is enough. I have to come back. I have to be the Knight. I have to be that vengeance again. And he says, this should be agony. I should be a mass of aching muscle, broken, spent, and unable to move. And were I an older man, I surely would. But he jumps on top of the car, and then they slam on the brakes, and they screech to a halt. And then here comes the cops, and Batman says, these men are mine. And so he goes after them. And as he goes after them, he starts playing dirty as he's gotten older. So he comes up from underneath and pulls this guy down from the scaffolding. And he's used his years of knowledge. It says there are 7 working defenses from this position, where he's coming up on a man who's holding a gun. He says 3 of them disarm with minimal contact, 3 of them kill, and he said, and the other hurts. And you see this sickening crack as he kicks the man right, pretty much right in the area right there below his belly button, but above his manhood, we shall say. And the cop shows up again and says, you're under arrest, mister. You've crippled that man. He's young. He'll probably walk again, but you'll stay scared, won't you, punk? So you get to see that he knows the right road to take, but now he's taking a darker path. He's figuring out where he needs to go to meet these people on their own terms and on their own battlefield. And then we get to see the Joker. We get to see Batman's nemesis. And supposedly he also has been redeemed and reborn. But when it's all said and done, it is funny. Alfred says, sir, there is a precedence for wheelchair detectives. And Batman says, shut up, Alfred. You get to see just how sane the Joker really is. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different outcome. Here, the Joker tries a different approach. And he's talking to this schlub here. And he says, I got a problem. I like to make stuff. It's all I'm good at. Well, Harvey Dent wants to pay me a lot of money to make him some bombs. He needs them tonight. And the Joker's sitting there just smoking on the other side of the chicken wire. And he says, "What kind of bombs?" And let's see what else we have here. So eventually you get a chopper coming up against Batman, and they have snipers in the chopper. Well, Batman's got a sniper rifle of his own, and eventually he gets hit. Right there, he's running across a line. Now remember, I told you this is a 55 or so year old man, and he's running across this line here, and eventually he gets shot. Well, it's Kevlar. He put Kevlar right there and armor plating. Says magnum load, it hits me like a freight train, but the plate holds. It says, "Why do you think I wear a target on my chest? Can't armor my head." And eventually, he swings around and makes this triumphant counterattack to what the chopper was doing. So, and it's not actually, no, I'm sorry, it's not cops, but it's Harvey. And he says, "What are you so mad about bats? I've been a sport. You have to admit that I played along. And you took your joke about as far as it could go." And it says, "The scars go deep and too deep. I close my eyes and listen. I'm not fooled by sight. I see him as he is." And so even though they fixed Harvey's face, they can't fix his soul. They can't fix his mind. They can't fix who he really is. He really is, in his mind, he's Two-Face. And he has to go by those rules. That's the only thing that makes sense to him. So Bruce gets really torn up by that. He says, "I see," Harvey says, have a look, Batman. Have a laugh, Batman. Take a look." And Batman says, I see a reflection." And that's the end of book 1. But we get the return of Batman to a city that hasn't seen him for at least a decade, probably more. And you get to see how intelligent great art and the melding of magnificent, well thought out writing can do to make a truly greatest hit book. I can't wait. I've read this story. I've read it 100 times if I've read it once, but I've never read it in floppies like this. And it's great to know that I have to wait a whole nother month before I can get a hold of issue number 2 and continue this story, because I intend on reading it just like this. So thanks for joining me, guys. This was Greatest Hits with Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, Facsimile Edition, issue 1. And let's see, what do I have coming up next? You'll get to see The Phantom of the Opera, and we'll do an initial assessment on this book from Image, and it's Tyler Boss and Martin Simmons doing the artwork on this one. So thanks, guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video.